Back on a Wednesday. That's Derek. I'm Rob. We're Sports Steak. Let's smash the like button if we could, friends. We do appreciate it hanging out with you. First off, let's start with some birds here, Derek. So started digging around and just thinking about the Eagles drafts of late. Naturally it was an area where because there were some whiffs, Danny Watkins and John Harris's of the world that we all remember over the years, in an area where, they have fallen under some criticism. But if you start to look at this team, I think it's a really interesting mix of draft and trades and signees. Okay. So let's go to the offensive side. One of the great coups ever is, because there's actually a couple of these on that side of the ball. Now you look at it, getting Jalen Hurts in the second round, even though a lot of people scratched their heads when they did it, could go down as one of the all-timers, for sure. Well, let's start there.
People didn't just scratch their heads. People were irate that the Eagles used a second-round pick when there were so many other positions they could have addressed and got a quality player. And people are thinking, what are you doing? You just paid a franchise quarterback all that money. And now you're going out and using a second-round pick on another quarterback? Mm-hmm. Could the Eagles have seen potential problems down the road with this guy even after they gave him money and Carson Wentz that we never saw, obviously? Because as we've come to learn, Carson Wentz, since he's left here, his career has spiraled out of control. And Jalen Hurts is being talked about as one of the elite quarterbacks in the National Football League. So kudos to the Eagles for identifying this way before anybody caught on to what their long-term plan was.
Yep. And kudos for developing him. Like, he deserves a lion's share of that props, because the dude is a working machine. But they did a great job of cultivating him and getting him to where he is too. So props all around.
Whether he used the motivation of people always counting me out, when you consider what happened to him at Alabama, lost his starting job, moved on to Oklahoma, had a great finish to his college career there. It wasn't projected. No, there were no so-called experts that projected him to go in the second round the year he came out. I think the earliest projection I saw was a third-round pick at the earliest. Some said fourth or fifth.
Agreed.
Needs development. It would take time with him. And the Eagles jumped on that bandwagon real quick. Somebody in the organization, whether it was the scouts or Howie Roseman, saw something that we all missed. And, man, did they hit a home run with this kid.
They sure did. Let me interrupt for a second, Derek, before we get back to the Eagles things here. So Matt Gelb of The Athletic just tweeted out 2 minutes ago, the Phillies have recommended Andrew Painter to have Tommy John surgery. So here's the bummer about that, right? I mean, anything they got out of him after that when they shut him down initially, I expected nothing. So let me just say that. But the problem is, we're almost in August.
Yep.
You're probably looking at next year as well. If I'm the Phillies,
I don't think he's pitching next year, dude. They're all-star pitchers that missed a year and a half before they came back from a Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, like, to me, we're looking at 2025, which isn't. When you think about it, he'd be 22 at the time. It's not crazy. He's only 20 years old.
But the good thing is, younger you are, the quicker you heal.
Exactly right.
Yep.
So, and a lot of guys go through it now, and they're just fine on the other end. It's not the way it was back in the day where it was, oh my God, your career could be over. It's different.
Tommy John surgery has come such a long ways and has been tweaked by so many medical experts to get athletes back quicker. But, whereas, as you just said, you were talking about the prospects of them not having a career. Now you're talking about a year and a half. It might be a year before he can throw hard again.
Right.
Which means you'll probably lose mostly all. He might be able to rehab by this time next year, starting like double-A ball, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah. Get him a little touch in the minor leagues. And that's good. I agree with you. Yeah. So here's the release from the Phillies, Derek. Right-hander Andrew Painter has been undergoing conservative management for a right elbow partial ulnar collateral ligament. Easy for me to say. UCL. Why did I just say that? Injury since March 2nd. While he was able to return to throwing bullpens and follow-up imaging, has shown that the interval, TERVAL, healing in his elbow. Over the last few weeks, he continues to be symptomatic upon examination. Considering the timing of the season and that Painter is still experiencing symptoms, the Phillies medical staff has recommended he undergo right elbow UCL reconstruction with ulnar nerve transportation. That's a fancy term for Tommy John. Going to consult with Neil L. Trachet, who did the surgery for Bryce Harper and is the expert at this. He'll go out to LA July 24th, which is Monday, to get a consult from the doctor. You kind of felt it going there. You just sort of, you were hoping against hope. I mean, think about how often is it that these guys just rest and they're fine. It usually never works that way. It's a shame. It's a shame.
And the reason Harper was able to come back is he doesn't need his arm to throw.
Exactly.
He just needed his bat. Whereas Painter, you're talking about velocity, multitudes of
stress on the arm, the whole nine. Yeah.
And who's to say he may have tried to do too much in his rehab, which set him back as well.
Yeah.
So I hate to hear that from a young man, but the bottom line, he's 20 years old. At the very worst, he's back when he's 22 with this thing.
Yeah. It's too bad.
It's a shame. We went from him possibly being the number 5 starter in this rotation as a 20-year-old to now having to wait maybe 2 more years to see what he's capable of doing at this level. And the Phillies have enough money; they can go out and buy another pitcher if they need one.
Sure.
You
absolutely.
Look at it like that, but that's such is the case.
Yeah, and look, the encouragement. If I would look at it this way, and obviously it's hard if you're Andrew Painter, you're probably devastated. But you're 20, you're not 32. You'll rehab right, you get back, you'll be better than ever. So it's tough break for him, tough break for the Phillies, but that's life. That's life in the big leagues. All right. So we'll get into that a little bit later when we revisit the Phillies. Anyway, so we started off with Hurts, who was a draft pick. Let me just go to the offensive line for a second, Derek.
Yep.
He's talking about homegrown here. Okay. So you work your way with one of the all-time steals at left tackle with Jordan Mailata.
Yes.
7th rounder. Hadn't played football. Got him in the 7th round. Then you go, his guard mate next to him is Landon Dickerson, who was a 2nd round pick.
Yep.
Guy who we thought maybe was going to be a center, but projected out in the NFL game as a guard, and he's been really good. The big concern there was staying healthy, and knock on wood, pretty healthy so far. Then you go center. 6th round. Again, one of the all-time picks right here. Jason Kelsey in the 6th round. Incredible. Now, what we're looking at at the other guard spot is either going to be 2nd rounder Cam Jurgens or 2nd rounder Tyler Steen. We don't know which, but either way, the guy's going to be homegrown. Then you go to the right side. It's Lane Johnson, 1st round pick, highly
overall.
Yes, exactly. The entire offensive line is homegrown. Not one trade, not one free agent. That's great drafting right there, whether it's high or low. You go from the extreme of Lane to Jordan Mailata, and then there's a bunch of guys in between. So they have a knack for that. They have a good development system with Jeff Stoutland. They're in a good place at offensive line. Okay.
There's no question. You know what? Yeah. Through the years, they hit and missed on so many areas, but the one constant was they've always had, no matter who's making the decisions, who's scouting this team, they've always made the right decisions in terms of the trench warfare on both sides of the line for the most part when you think about it.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
They've done an incredible job in terms of being consistent with finding linemen to put on their uniform. And, people snickered. Let's face it, people snickered when they drafted a rugby player, a 6'8" rugby player in the 7th round when he came out. This guy's never going to make it. He's practice squad material for his entire career. He doesn't even know how to put on a uniform, so on and so forth. Patience is his own reward.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Patience, good coaching and hard work on all these guys' parts to get better. I'm watching video today again. Lane Johnson in the barn, just cranking. That guy works, man. It's not a coincidence he's as good as he is. He's always putting in the work. All right, so running back is where it's a little bit unique. So they signed Rashad Penny, who's a free agent, and they didn't give much up, but they traded for DeAndre Swift. So they've taken kind of a different route with that, whereas the last few years it's been a 2nd round pick in Miles Sanders. But so this is where they're incorporating other stuff here, Derek, at the running back spot. They've gone, let's face it, cheap, and they brought in some guys. Now, Kenny Gainwell was a draft pick, right? Yeah. Boston Scott, I believe they got him off the Saints practice squad, maybe. So they've done it different ways at the running back spot.
Well, this is the team that's not going to put a lot of money into a feature back. Even during the era of Chip Kelly, when he decided to let LaShawn McCoy go, their offense is structured to where a lot of backs can flourish in terms of what they need to do. And that's what the Eagles are going to do. They don't need a Josh Jacobs, a Derrick Henry, a Jonathan Taylor. Miles Sanders was a 1,000-yard rusher, but he wasn't a so-called feature back. He was a lead back, but he wasn't a feature back. And as we saw, the more the season wore on, especially when it got to the playoffs, he became an afterthought more so than at the forefront of their offense. And Gainwell stepped up, and Boston Scott stepped up, so on and so forth. So, yeah, they've chosen a different route. They went out this season. They got proven commodities to help fill out the roster spot. But there's, obviously some negatives with them in terms of health. But you don't have to run one of them unmercifully. You can back off and keep these guys a whole lot fresher deeper into the season.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. All right. Then we go receiver, and it's a little bit of everything. You made the trade to get A.J. Brown.
Yep.
With the Titans. You gave up a first rounder. No one is upset about that. He had a great year last year. You draft Devontae Smith in the first round. Now, you did that a year after taking Jalen Reagor, and some people are saying you don't do that, but you got it right with Devontae. And then whoever your third guy is, whether it's Quez, who was a later round pick, or Zacchaeus, that was a free agent trade. So receiver's a little bit of a hodgepodge position for them.
That's understandable. In hindsight now, man, we ripped the Eagles for taking receivers in the first round in back-to-back years, but at least they were honest enough to admit finally they made a mistake with Reagor and let him move on. And obviously he's done nothing with Minnesota. Yeah. But you're right. They bounced back and they get it right. They changed their MO. That was the year they started changing their MO in terms of neglecting players from the most dominant college conference in all of college.
Yeah, that's when the SEC started becoming a thing. Yes, thankfully.
And so all of a sudden, thankfully, now they're hitting home runs by honing in on that conference, and especially Alabama and Georgia. The two premier teams in that conference.
Well said. Well said. All right. So then tight end, obviously Dallas Goedert is a homegrown draft pick. The big thing is just stay on the field. When that guy stays on the field, he's a beast. So you have Dallas Goedert. Stoll was he an undrafted free agent?
I know Calcaterra was, but I'm not sure about him.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to pull that up right now as we speak. I should have checked that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, your starter, at least at that spot, is a homegrown guy. So yeah. So Stoll, undrafted free agent. All right. Out of Nebraska. All right. So anyway, that's the offensive side. Now we go to the other side. And again, this is a real mix here. So you go Hassan Reddick, free agent, great free agent signing. Josh Sweat, homegrown, fourth round pick.
Yep.
Fletcher Cox, homegrown pick, first rounder.
Yep.
Jalen Carter, homegrown pick, first rounder. Brandon Graham, homegrown pick, first rounder. That's essentially your starters across the line of scrimmage here, or depending on how you view Hassan Reddick. Linebackers a little bit different. Nicholas Morrow's a free agent. Nakobe Dean was a third rounder. You have a little mix there. Your free agents, I'm going to count Reed Blankenship as homegrown because he was undrafted, but they signed him out of college.
Yep.
And then you signed Terrell Edmonds out of Pittsburgh. You have Sidney Brown in the wings there, who was a third round pick this past year. That's your safety spot, or your safety and linebacker spot. Corner is a trade for Slay, a free agent Bradbury, and a draftee in the fourth round in Avonte Maddox. So the defensive side of the ball is really a mix where I think the offense is more heavier draftees than anything else.
I agree. And, let's talk about the patience they had with Brandon Graham to develop. Fletcher Cox, they hit a home run with early in his career. He was dominant early in his career. Josh Sweat finally came into his own.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter, the sky's the limit. Can't wait to see what this kid can do. And then you got another first-round pick waiting in the wings in Jordan Davis. Mm-hmm. We don't know what he's capable of, but the sky's the limit for this young man. You got two guys in back-to-back years that are highly touted from back-to-back college football championship teams.
Right.
you know. And then we're not even talking about Nolan Smith, another one with a high ceiling. You know, those are the backups. So this team has been hitting home runs left and right in terms of not just filling the starters, but getting depth as well.
Yeah.
You know, at fair bargain basement prices. You know, outside of Reddick, they didn't really think about it. They really didn't have. They paid Cox his money. Brandon Graham got his money, but at this stage of where they are, they're very feasible under the cap to allow them to do some other things. You know, so you know the mix and match that they've been able to put together, and look how it worked out for them last year.
Yeah, look, Derek, I think we will look back at. It's a shame. Again, it's a shame. Another reason it's a bummer they didn't win it, but I don't think we're going to see a team with that kind of depth maybe again.
No,
and not in a salary cap age. It's hard to have the kind of depth that they had.
Yes, you know, because the better they play, the more they command, and you're forced to make some serious financial decisions. And your decisions entail: can we fit them in under the cap, or do we have to go through free agency or the draft to try to replace them? And anytime you go to the draft, I don't care where you pick, it's all you're always spinning that roulette wheel. You don't know if they're going to pan out. You hope they do, and in the Eagles' cases, more times than not, they've panned out.
Well, let's go back to Howie and just, you know, the misses early and then the recognition, like you said, right around like 2018 or 19, that I need to start digging into this conference that's got Georgia and Bama and some of the other big boys. You look at what they've done there now: Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, all Georgia guys. Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. Devontae Smith, out of Alabama. So you're talking about, even if you maybe want to mix in Clemson, who had a couple of years there, but you talk about the two most dominant teams in college football over the last 7-8 years. Bama even further than that, which they have really dipped into that pool, and it's paid big time dividends. But and even when you go Jalen Hurts, I mean, he spent 3 years at Bama before going to Oklahoma. You know, they've done very well with that strategy. It seems obvious, right? But whatever. I don't care how they got to it. They're doing it right now.
Oh, there's no question about it. And along the way, Howie has had to learn some valuable lessons, as he expressed on this very show last year, in terms of not thinking consistently he's the smartest guy in the room. He had to start listening more to his scouting staff, to his owner, to his grandfather. You know, that was the best line ever. Even grandpa said, hey, what about the guys in the SEC? How come you're not drafting more of those guys?
Yeah.
You know, and kudos to Jeffrey Lurie for having the patience with Howie. Yep. You think about how many GMs that had the multitude of hits and misses that Howie had prior to the last 3 years. They're not with those teams anymore.
Yep.
Okay. Howie somehow, some way woke up and said, you know what? My way is not the best way. And if I keep doing it my way, I'm going to eventually hit the highway.
Yeah.
You know, he likes being a part of the Eagles organization. He likes where he is. He had to change. He had to take a long, hard look at himself in the mirror and realize that I've got to do a better job of listening to people. He didn't listen to Modrak the way he should have. When Tom Modrak was one of the best evaluators of talent, I knew Tom Modrak from Pittsburgh, you know, and he didn't really listen to Modrak a lot. But then all of a sudden, you know, Joe Douglas gets here. First of all, they hire a guy like Joe Douglas to be his second year. Joe Douglas comes from one of the best drafting entities in the NFL down in Baltimore.
Ozzie Newsome. They're from the Ozzie Newsome tree.
Yeah. So the fact that he brings a Joe Douglas in to pick his brain on what you look for and how you draft, that was a start.
And Andy Weidel, who was Douglas's right man.
Yes. You know, and then all of a sudden, you know, how he evolved from there. And what he's done over the last 3 years, in terms of getting frontline players, significant role players, you can't help but praise him for what he's done. And look at how people have changed. You know, it wasn't that long ago the fan base wanted to run Howie out of town.
Yep.
And now, you know, what was that video we had last year? We talked about Howie's at some game and fans said, you know, Howie, we forgive you. And Howie says, you forgive me, bleep you, I forgive you.
I think it was in Houston. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a road game in Houston.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah.
But that's one of the best exchanges ever, you know?
No, listen, I'm still laughing about that exchange. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was kind of like, we just won a Super Bowl. We at that point they were like whatever 8-0, and he was getting hit with that. But yeah, I think as much as painful as it probably still is for him, and certainly was at the time, being sort of demoted for a year might have forced him to do things differently and look at himself differently and look in the mirror differently, and ultimately made him better. I think that's kind of life a lot of times. When you get, sort of punched in the mouth sometimes, it sort of wakes you up. If everything's going well, you're going to kind of just go status quo. Like, hey, I'm crushing it. Well, I don't need to do anything different. When something happens, it forces you to step back and kind of take a look at things. And you're right. Give Jeffrey Lurie a lot of credit, because that whole situation was so weird. Like, he's still with the team and he's still getting paid a lot of money. Well, what's he really do? Is he just doing cap? Like, what's he doing? And then it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work out with Chip, and you go back to him, and it's kind of like, wait, you didn't have enough faith in this guy to keep him around.
Right.
Now he's back, and how's this going to work? And
with a new title, with an additional title.
Yeah. I mean, ever since then. And if they do have a bad year, they usually bounce back quick. Like, they had the bad year, Chips, last year. And, that first year under Doug was pretty good. You could see they were going in the right direction. Then they win it the next year. And then, by the third or fourth year of Doug, it goes kind of sideways, and they get to the playoffs in Nick Sirianni's first year, and they get to a Super Bowl the following. Like, it's been a really quick bounce back for them when things go bad. They never fall into a real sustained period of poor football.
Now, and look at how some teams get the death penalty. Once they start to go bad, it takes them 4 or 5 years to bounce back. A bad year for the Eagles is a good year for a lot of other teams.
Yeah.
In recent years. And again, it goes to a changing of the mindset, a changing of the blueprint. We ran this course this way, and we got more negative results than positive results.
Yeah.
And when you surround yourself with successful people, if you truly open up your mind, and if you truly admit I'm willing to learn, you can't help but be successful. Let's face it, the NFL is a steal ideas from each other league as well as a copycat league.
No doubt.
And Howie stole ideas from Joe Douglas, from Andy Weidel, and with a revamped coach scouting staff as well. And it's paid off with tremendous dividends for him. There's no question.
Yeah, it has. And I think too, it's tough because they've lost a lot of front office people.
Yeah, they have
over the last couple of years. I mean, guys departing to the Jets, to Cleveland, to all over the place. And you always wonder, as much as we always talk about this in terms of head coaches losing assistant coaches, which can hurt a team. So can losing these kind of key pieces in the organization. And I was a little leery, and I think the other thing that Howie does really well is he just reads the draft board well.
I agree.
He had a sense that Jalen Carter was going to start falling. I don't know that he knew Nolan Smith would fall as far as he did, because I think their plan ultimately was to trade away that 30th overall pick this past year. But as he started to see Nolan Smith drop, he said, you know what, maybe we better stay where we are. And they read the room with Jalen Carter and got up one spot to make sure that they got him there, which was smart. And he utilized the first round pick, like I said, on A.J. Brown, which is, I mean, you traded away what amounted to a prospect that you never saw play on the field to a proven commodity in A.J. Brown, and it was a great move.
Yeah.
And now you have, arguably the best duo in football with those.
No question about it. No question.
Yeah. A lot of smart moves for sure. And again, this is where you also give the owner credit, who believed in the GM and what he was doing. And now you're talking about a team that also the offseason, he's able to keep a lot of the players that we thought were going to walk. Bradbury, we thought was going to walk. It looked like Slay was out the door.
Fletcher Cox.
We didn't know about Fletcher Cox. Yeah. Brandon Graham. They were all able to stick around for various different reasons. I think Brandon just wanted to be here and was willing to take a cheaper deal. But they still paid some other guys, and they sort of revamped the running back spot on the fly and let Miles Sanders go, and they're not big believers in that, paying a running back a ton of money. But I mean, all in all, darn good. All right, let's get a timeout here, Derek.
Mr. Yes. Tad says, "Hey, just look at how much Rob owes D Gunn for teaching him about new foods."
That's a good point, Mr. Taz. We're expanding our horizons. I am.
You're not. No, you're not.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better. All right, so that's what we'll do when we come back. We will dip our toe into pretty much everything with Mike Sealski. We will talk Eagles as they're 6 days away. We will talk Phillies. We will talk Sixers. We will jump around with Mike, who covers it all for the Philadelphia Inquirer. So he'll join us. We'll talk some more Sixers in depth at 1:30 at 2:00 NFL, including our greatest series, which continues with the Rams, and then a bunch of other stuff, including Tiger Woods. And it's also National Hot Dog Day, Derek Gunn. So we will touch on that as well. Don't go anywhere. He's Derek. I'm Rob. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because trying to find that right person to invest your hard-earned money with, okay, that will do the right things for you so that down the line you are taken care of because you work too hard not to be. I found the right person, and it's Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business and you need help with your employee benefits. That's another resource that Jim can assist you with. I know personally, I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751. 610-996-4751. You could also email Jim at Murray, MURRAY.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.com.